The nature and process of prioritization. Most organizations do not have a good prioritization process, and yet this is the process through which millions, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars, pounds, euros are processed every year, and which is why so much of it is wasted, because it's spent on projects that should never have been approved. So the key question for a prioritization process is, which projects should we and which projects shouldn't we approve, fund and manage? I believe there's a direct correlation between the quality of your prioritization process and the quality of management. Good management only accept a good prioritization process. And yet, worldwide surveys keep finding that organizations and the executive teams in particular say that we do not have a good prioritization process, and yet it can be quite simple. It does have ramifications, because when you do have a high quality, effective prioritization process, some of the executives' pet projects may not get up, but that can be a good measure of whether or not your process works. Let's look at the 5 components. So the question we're trying to answer is, what are the highest priority projects now? And now is an important point, because if we review them in a year's time, our strategy may have changed, so we may make different decisions. So we're doing this now. And the first question of any project must be, is it strategically relevant? Is it taking us into the direction that we want to go as a company? Is it helping us achieve what we believe is important to our future? There can be very good ideas that can have wonderful cost savings, but if they're irrelevant to our strategy, we should not be doing them, at least not now. In one utility, the marketing director put up a project to improve the performance of the call center. Customer service is of course important, but right now that was not a strategic imperative. So it was not sufficiently strategically relevant. And you can't measure this at the strategy statement level. We want to be the highest in the market, or a low-cost supplier, or close to the customers, or fast product development. Those are too high a level to try and match again. You need to get down to the strategic imperative level. If we're going to be a low-cost supplier, what costs are we targeting to take out of the business? And how does this project enable us to target that particular type of cost, if that's what's one of your strategic imperatives? Most middle-sized organizations will have 20 to 30 strategic imperatives. Large organizations can have 40 to 50. But it's all easy to document and give you a strategic contribution assessment tool that you can use to score consistently, normalized across the whole portfolio, each project's strategic relevance. If a project's not strategically relevant, you shouldn't be doing it. And mandatory projects, by the way, in terms of legal and regulatory requirements, are automatically strategically relevant, because remaining compliant and in business is always a strategy. The second question is it worthwhile? Are the outcomes, benefits and value of the project worthwhile? Is it worth the effort? Is it worth the time commitment, the allocation of resources? Now, a lot of projects can tell you what they're going to do. They can tell you what they're going to deliver. But they don't tell you what they're trying to actually achieve, what the new business as usual end states will be. So you need to actually look and see whether in fact the project is actually defining what the outcomes are, rather than what the project's all about. Two very different things. And it doesn't always have to be a positive financial outcome. There are other reasons why you might have to do a project. You might need to catch up with the competition. You're not going to gain any more customers, you're just not going to lose any. And that losing customers in that context isn't really a benefit, it's just staying in business. So is it worthwhile? Are the outcomes, benefits and value worth the effort, the time and the dedication of resources? The third question is it deliverable? It may be strategically relevant, it may be worthwhile, but if we can't deliver it, it has no value. So we need to test for deliverability. And we do that in 3 ways. First of all, risks. Risks to the successful delivery of the project. risks to the successful delivery of the benefits, risks to the business from the project to make sure that we can actually deliver it and it doesn't screw the business. So these need to be comparable across the whole portfolio. You've got to have a consistent set of risk measures. Then you can compare the different levels of risk and the likelihood of achieving the outcomes and benefits. The second deliverability test is capability. Do we, in the organization, have the capability to successfully deliver this project? Now, capability is actually an organizational attribute, not an individual one. Having competent people is great, but it's only a component of capability. Capability includes processes, systems, performance measures, management incentives, a whole range of other aspects which have to be aligned to enable you to deliver certain types of projects. So looking at capability, this is a new concept, but if you as an organization don't have the capability to deliver this project successfully, it doesn't mean it necessarily will fail in terms of collapsing, but it does mean it will go over time, over budget, and deliver a compromised result. So instead of spending, say, 100 million and getting 200 million in terms of value, you end up spending 200 million and getting 100 million in terms of value. That's what capability looks to identify up front. Capacity is, do you have the people that you need to put on this project for it to be successful? Who you put on the project determines its results. If you put the B team on, you'll get B team level results. If you put the C team on, you'll get C level results. In every organization, there are only a few people that everybody seems to want on their project. So you need to say, well, if you need some of these people, are they going to be available when required and for as long as required? And if you haven't got the people to do the project, don't do it. Now, some skills and expertise you can buy in, others you need to have in-house. And even the ones you buy in may not be available in the market at that time. So do you actually have the resources to bring this in? So this is just an assessment of the project as it is. Then you need to look at one of the next question is, which is it set up for success? This is the validation process. What you need to ensure is that despite what the documentation says, what is really happening under the covers. All the problems that, or most of the problems that a project can experience downstream can be visible at the business case stage, if you know where to look. So many projects we see being approved that are set up to fail. They just don't have all the bits in place that they need to be successful. Now, many a project manager will say, oh, it doesn't really matter, there's just a little point here and a little point there and one over there, and I know about all these things and we'll fix them downstream, but it doesn't happen. What you've got to make sure is you have a team, an independent team, validate each project and its business case and its governance team and its project manager if necessary to say, do these people, does this project, is it set up for success? Does it all hang together? Have they identified all of the benefits, or are they parking some such that they can maybe justify another project? Have we identified all the costs, or are they deliberately underbidding in order to get it approved such that they can come back for more money later? Does the work plan in the project actually deliver the outcomes claimed in the business case? Does the solution actually address the problem? All these sort of questions should be addressed by the validation process. And this should be rigorous. In fact, this is a leading indicator of how good your prioritization process is. If you have a really rigorous, independent validation process, then only the projects that pass will get to the final stage of prioritization and approval. Here we would normally have an investment committee, and they would be looking at it, and now because it's gone through these other tests, they no longer need to second guess, is this the best solution? All that's looked at in validation. Is it a worthwhile? That's all been checked. Is it strategically relevant? That's been validated as well. So their key question now, is it something we want to do now? And they can then make a decision, and it's not just a go, no go, that's an oversimplification. EA can say, well, yes, we'll approve it to the next stage, or we'll approve it to a certain point, or we'll approve it subject to. There's a whole range of decisions that they can actually make at this stage. But one interesting aspect when this type of prioritization process is installed is the number of bad proposals goes down radically. People do their strategic scoring and go, whoops, this isn't going to get up, folks. They look at their value proposition and say, this isn't going to be worthwhile. They do their deliverability assessments and say, nice idea, but we just can't make it happen. So the number of bad proposals goes down, and the quality of what's coming through for approval and the thinking behind it, and therefore the project setup, improves dramatically. So how do you go about it? It's quite simple. First of all, you need to create and introduce a strategic contribution assessment tool. And in the top prioritization center of expertise, we provide you with the tools to create and introduce an SAT into your organization. Then you implement the value equation, or you can do this first, whereby you equip each project to actually define the outcomes, benefits and value, and maximize the outcomes, benefits and value, such that you get the most value for every dollar you invest. You may have your own risk assessments, but they need to be comparable. Or you can implement the systemic risk assessments we provide as part of the expertise, which gives you a common basis across all projects in terms of their risk levels. Then there's the implement the capability assessment, which is actually quite simple. There's a way we provide of assessing your organization's capability and each project's required capability. If there's a gap, then you know you have a problem. And also implement capacity assessment in terms of, have we got the people to put on this of the right skills and caliber, and can we actually absorb the level of change this project will deliver when it is due to deliver. Because again, if you can't implement it, it is not worth anything. So you need to set these building blocks up, these 5 building blocks. Do we actually have these things in place? And we provide you with the tools, techniques and processes to do that. Then you need to ensure that in your business case that you actually capture the outputs as part of the process. Then introduce the validation process. Obviously, you've got to have something to validate. In some organizations, they've actually started with the validation process to highlight the need for the other tools. That's a very valid strategy. And finally, a summary approval process. You don't need the investment committee to have the whole business case anymore, which might be 40, 50, 60, 70 pages in length. They just need a short summary that says, these are the key points on which you can make a prioritization decision. We have done all the checking and validating beforehand. These are the points you need to assess. And therefore it makes their time much better used, because they only have maybe 4 to 6 pages of information. They can make better decisions. As an organization, you make better investments and you get better results, more profits and more competitiveness. It really is that simple.